welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to talk about the 14 books that I read in August. I did not misspeak. You heard that correctly. I read 14 books in the month of August. Until August, I read 16 books throughout the entire year. So I'm cheating a little bit because I pulled up my Goodreads because I don't remember some of these. But so the first book I'm going to talk about is Roughing the Kicker by Emily Silver. I actually listened to this on Hoopla. I ended up giving this one 3 stars. I think really what saved it was the end of the book. The beginning I was kind of like a little bit, I don't know if I'm gonna like this. It's a friends to lovers, but she's been like pining for him for years since they were teenagers, and he had a girlfriend like forever, and then he gets hurt. He's the kicker of the football team. I think it's like their home team or their farm team or whatever. But he gets injured and he's kind of a dick about it. Like, he expects his girlfriend to like drop everything and take care of him, and then when she wouldn't do it, he immediately calls Tenley, I think is her name, his friend, and she drops everything. And I was like, oh, of course, absolutely, I'll help you, because she's so like far gone for him that she will do anything for him. So there is some other woman drama with the girlfriend, but it's like, it feels unnecessary and just thrown in there just to have it. But like, the third act breakup doesn't really have anything to do with that, so I'm like, it kind of felt unnecessary to me to put it in there, since it really had no point and didn't really make any kind of, there was no purpose for it, in my opinion. But I had to give this one 3, I think it's 3.5 stars. And then after that, I listened to Blurred Red Lines by Cora Kenburn. This is the first book of the Carrera Cartel. I ended up giving this one also 3 stars. I did listen to the audio all in one sitting, and I was listening to it when I was at work, so that it's gonna be my fault, because I wasn't giving it the undivided attention I feel like it deserved. So there's also a lot of like, it felt really, really insta-love between I think the heroine she works at a bar of a guy who's like involved with the cartel, and the son of the cartel leader ends up like having a thing for her, and she like kidnaps her because she sees something she shouldn't have, and it's very like, I almost want to say it's Stockholm syndrome, but it happens like super fast, where she's like in love with him. I don't know. And overall I enjoyed it, and there is some like stuff that unravels toward the end, which I was kind of like, I think I really need to go back and maybe re-listen, or at least really read part of the end of it, because I was like, wait, this sets up for the next books in the series. Then after that, I read Physically It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. I tried to get an audio for this. The waitlist was way too long, so I said, fuck it, I'm just going to read it physically. I ended up giving this 4 stars. I liked it. I am an Atlas stan, obsessed with Atlas. I read this because I wanted to read it before the movie came out, because we did go see the movie like the day after I finished reading this. But I have a whole, like, I talk about this in a reading vlog that I will link up in the cards somewhere, but I enjoyed it. I think it felt like a little bit choppy, because there was a lot of time skipping, but I really did like, there were letters to Ellen that you got the past from, of her explaining her parents and their abusive relationship, and then meeting Atlas, who was this homeless kid that kind of squatted in the house next door, and what happens with them and their romance. And I really, really wish there was more of that. I understand it's like basically solely around Lily's journey and falling into an abusive relationship as an adult, but like, Atlas was such an integral part of her story, especially when they reconnect. Like, he knew her past, he was aware of her past, he lived a lot of her past with her, witnessed it, and I feel like that there should have been more of him as an adult, especially like, I feel like it's not a spoiler, like they end up together. I don't want to say it, like, come on, y'all have read it or seen the movie by now, right? And I just feel like there should have been more of him, more of them as adults. I just want more of that. I know It Starts With Us does have more of that, and you do get Atlas's POV, but I don't know if it's like a rehash of the events of this book from his POV, and then it kind of moves forward a little bit to see them together. I don't know exactly what it is, and I'm curious to find out, but a lot of people have said It Starts With Us is kind of like a useless book. Like, there's no point to it. So I don't know. We'll see. I may pick it up just because I want more Atlas. So next, I listened to Hate You Always by Jennifer Sukovich, which is the first book of the Western Wildcats hockey series. Again, I gave this one 3 stars. It's new adult. I think it's new adult hockey. It was fine. It was a brother's best friend. I think they're in college together, and she gets drunk at a party one night, and he ends up taking her home and finds out that she has this like bucket list that she wants to go through before she finishes college. And a lot of it is like stuff that's like typical college stuff, but she's like a goody, I want to say goody and like just there to study and hasn't really done anything, gone out and had fun. It was like her first party she went and got drunk at. I think she's a junior. So he sees this bucket list and he's like, you know, I can help you with this. It's just one of those. That's what it is. It's fine. It was a fun time. Okay, after that, again, this is why I listened to so many books in August, because I had a lot of audios. I listened to The Lies We Steal by Monty J. This is the first book of the Hollow Boy series. So I give this one 4 stars. This is very reminiscent of the Devil's Night series. It takes place, but I think it takes place at it's new adult. It takes place at a university. But it's very similar vibes, and I actually think I want to go back and re-listen to this, or read and listen to it, because I definitely missed quite a few things, which is, again, my bad. I need to be better at choosing which audiobooks that I listen to at work, because it's clear the dark romance ones definitely need me to have more attention given to them. But I did give it 4 stars. Because it was a good time, and I love Devil's Night. I don't think it was quite up to Devil's Night standards, I'll be honest. But I am intrigued enough to continue with this series. Then I read a novella that I found on, I don't know where I found it. It might have been Dark and Disturbed's Facebook group. I don't know. It's called Ghost Dick by Kinsley Kincaid, and that is the exact reason I read it, was because of the title. I was curious. She had it for, it wasn't free. It was like maybe $2 on her website. You can get on her website. I think it was because it was banned or something. That's why I read it. They took it off Amazon or something like that. And y'all know, if it's off Amazon, I have to get my hands on it and figure out what about it is so taboo. This one I gave it 3 stars, but I never know how to rate novellas, because I always come out of them wanting there to be more to it, even though I know the point of a novella is to have it short, sweet, and to the point. But I would have liked more development a little bit. So we have our heroine whose father dies. She ends up going back to his hometown, where apparently it feels very like paranormal cultish, because like everyone in the town has a role to play, and your children are predestined to step into your fill your shoes. So like someone is the mortician. In her case, her grandmother is the keeper of the cemetery, and like in the very beginning you have a flashback. It's like the 80s, I think, where one of her sons commits suicide because he refuses to be trapped in this town and refuses to like play these roles that have been set for them. Like new people don't come into the town unless you are invited by like the council of people, and like you don't leave or horrible things happen to you. And that's what happened with her parents, because I believe both of her parents died in a car accident or something. And so she ends up going back home and becomes like kind of stuck in this town. But it ends up that her uncle, when he died as a teenager, becomes trapped in the town as a ghost, but he's like a sentient, like tangible ghost. And it turns out that he and the female main character, who is his niece, have a relationship. So it is an incestual book, because they are blood related, uncle and niece. But he's like 20 some years old when he dies, so they're about the same age. but he's a ghost. But he's a ghost that can have sex. He can get into like a corporeal form and stuff. It was like, you don't even really think about, honestly, I don't even really think about that him being her uncle, because he's just like a ghost. But I really liked his character. He was a lot of fun. And it was a good time. It wasn't like, it was fun. It was really fun. And I think it would have made a really good like full length novel. I think there was a lot there to do with that, especially with the surrounding the town and this weird like cult like thing where they're all trapped in these like roles they have to play. I don't know. It was a lot of fun. I did give it 3 stars, but it was a fun time. Next, I listened to Cakewalk by Claire Hastings. Again, another 3-star read. This one was fine. It was like small town. To be honest, there was a lot of potential here for this because of the way that he was a widower, and the way that he became a widower was very like traumatic. And I feel like it could have been leaned into a lot more than it was. It was more like cutesy, I don't want to say rom-com-ish, but like kind of, because she's a rich girl who leaves her husband, ends up in this small town and like fakes becoming like a baker at this like bake shop, and she has no idea how to do anything. I was just not a huge fan of her. I thought she was a little bit annoying. And it just felt like it was too easy, and like everything was just, there wasn't a lot of stakes involved. Like her ex-husband comes back, and I wanted a little bit more with that, because again, there was potential for this to be like a really good like romantic suspense or some other like conflict happening, and I think it was just lacking a little bit. And then I listened to, this is where my month started to pick up really well, I listened to Baby Moon or Bust by Ava Hunter, and I loved this book. I gave this one 4 stars. Saul is one of the best MMCs. I love him. So we have our heroine they're both like on a vacation trip somewhere, and they have a one-night stand and hook up, and then she's like an interior designer in Los Angeles, and he's like a mountain man that lives in Alaska and runs a bar with his friend, but he has like a traumatic past that kind of keeps him, he's like a reclusive, and he kind of just like stays away. But their one night stand ends up with her getting pregnant, and he doesn't find out until he sees an interview with her on Access Hollywood and is like, oh my god, that's her, what the fuck. So he goes, hi, we're back, it's a different day, I have makeup on, we're gonna finish this video. I got interrupted yesterday. So I was talking about Baby Moon or Bust by Ava Hunter, and I was talking about, I believe, the synopsis. So he sees her on an Access Hollywood interview that she's pregnant, and is like, what the fuck is happening? Finds out she's from LA, goes to LA to find her and like figure out what's going on. Like he assumes the baby's his, but he's not sure, so he wants to find out for certain. Runs into her cousin or somebody and finds out that she's on her way to Mexico for a baby moon, and so he decides to the cousin makes the idea that he should crash it, and the heroine, I can't remember her name right now, is completely blindsided because they don't tell her that he's doing this, and is like, what are you doing here? Like, oh my god, like what the fuck is happening? Because they haven't seen each other for 6 months or however long it's been since they hooked up. And he's like, wants to know like if this is his kid, and if it is, that he wants to be involved and be there and like raise this child. Like he's not going to be a deadbeat dad. His family finds out and is very skeptical. They think that maybe she's trying to like scam him in some kind of way, and what we really appreciate with that is him putting his foot down and saying, you need to stop meddling and like let me handle this, like get out of my business sort of situation, which I really, really appreciate. And I only gave it 4 stars. Like it was so good. And Solomon was consistent with his reactions to things throughout the whole book, which I really appreciated, because there is something that happens with like the family drama that goes on that I was like a little worried about, but he shut it down really quick, which we love. There was an incident that happens at like 85-90% of the way through, and I was like, normally I'm all for that kind of drama, but it just felt way too late in the book to be doing something like that. I think it was a little too much, I want to say, almost. But it was still a really, really good book. Next, I read Knotted by Pam Godwin. This is one of her older series, and this is like dark cowboy romance. And I loved this. There were so many like negative reviews. It only has like a 3.9, I think, rating on Goodreads, and I was like, what? Like 3.9 is not terrible. It's very close to a 4. But I just like all the reviews I kept seeing were so like negative, and I'm like, I loved this. Like, what does that say about me that I loved this? This was so good, you guys. I have a reading vlog of this where I go more in depth about it. I did listen to the audio and read it at the same time, which was a treat, a delight. It's a little interesting, their family dynamic, because they're two families that like run this massive like ranch together, and they live in like the same house but like different wings of the house. It's weird. So like Connor and his brother, and then Connor and her brother, and then Jake and his brother all grew up together. But Connor and Jake have always had a thing for each other, and now they're finally like acting on it, and they go out to like a ravine or somewhere to actually like seal the deal and have sex, and are interrupted. And Connor is raped in front of all 3 of the boys. They do murder the one. There was 2 of them. They murder one of them right there, and then the second one gets away. He gets arrested. There's just so much. There's a lot of time jumping. I think, what did I give this? I think I gave it 4 stars. So after the incident, like, it completely upheaves. Is that the right word I'm looking for? Connor's life. Like, her father moves her away from the ranch. They move to Chicago, and she doesn't know why. She's cut off from everyone and everything that she's ever found like comfort and support in, and is just like losing her mind. And her dad becomes like this crazy abusive asshole. So when she turns 18, she finally goes back home. All of the boys her brother went to prison because he was the one that killed somebody by accident that night. So her brother's in prison, and then Jake and his brother completely cut off all communication with Connor, and she doesn't understand why. And she goes home to find out why and to get answers, and discovers that Jake has, like, he purposely tries to push her away. And so they do eventually get back together, and a lot of it is him helping her get through she has a lot of PTSD and a lot of triggers, and he's helping her work through her triggers by like forcing them out of her. And that's where people kind of were like, this is not like a healthy way to do this. But I appreciated just his devotion to her and helping her heal, and wanting to replace these horrible memories with like ones of him and better memories. The one thing that had me give it 1 less star is that we get Jake and Connor's POV, but we get mostly Connor's POV, because, and like, even when they're apart, it's just Connor's POV. We only ever get Jake's POV when they are actually together. And I would have really, really appreciated having Jake's POV when they were also apart, and finding out, because there is like a suspense element to this, like why and what happened and why her father just like up and moved, without really giving any explanation as to why. And Jake finds all of this out, and you're just kind of told. He just kind of tells her like, oh, I learned this and this and this, and like I've been digging into this for years since it happened. I would have really, really liked to get those chapters of him like tearing shit apart, looking for all these answers and finding out the truth. But I loved this. I sat and read it in like 1 sitting. I cannot wait to read the other 2 books in the series, Booted and Buckled. One of them is Jake's brother. I can't remember his name. And then the other one is Connor's brother, the one that went to prison. So it's after he gets out of jail. So I am really, really excited. All right, then after that, I could delve back into the world of Catherine Cowles, and I read Perfect Wreckage, which is book 2 of the Wrecked series. I gave this one 4 stars. So this is Crosby and Kenna. Kenna has a very traumatic past, where she was dating this guy who's like one of the prominent wealthy families of the island. Anchor Island, I think, is where it takes place. And her family is kind of like not so much. They're like kind of the trash family. But Kenna and her boyfriend in high school were like a thing, and then she ends up getting pregnant, and he completely just loses his mind, cuts her off, and is like a child is not in the cards to me. Like, I'm going to college, like I have things to do, like thinking she's trying to trap him, and she is absolutely devastated. So she ends up getting taken in by his grandmother, and then the grandmother gets sick and dies and leaves her everything, and the family is not happy at all. And Crosby is the local lawyer who is there trying to help her, you know, deal with this loss, this contesting of the will. And it's their romance, and it is so good. And oh god, when you learned like what happened back in like the past with Kenna and her friend group who also get their own books, it's so good. I love Catherine Cowles, and like I always say that, and like I am still so far behind in her backlist, but like I want to savor them, even though I have like a million books to read. But they are so good and so enjoyable, and I love the romantic suspense element to it. I really enjoyed it. I cannot wait to read more of her backlist. What did I read next? Oh, then I read, again, I have a reading vlog of this as well, and I read Cash by Jessica Peterson, and I gave this one 3 stars. It's more like 3.5 probably, because the vibes were there. It was all for Cowboy. He absolutely has to be modeled after Riley Green. The description of him in the book is totally Riley Green, who is, if you don't know who he is, he's a country musician. Do yourself a favor and Google him, and you won't be disappointed. Plot for this was a little bit slow. It just read like basic romance. There wasn't really any kind of like conflict, I should say. The kind of like the plot basically is, we have our heroine, whose name I can't remember. She grew up on this massive cattle ranch that Cash is now the foreman of, and his brothers and like his whole family works there. And her mother her parents got a divorce when she was little. Her mother moved away to like the city, and she for years just thought her dad wanted nothing to do with her. He had no interest in her. Like, she always had this like resentment toward him. He ends up dying, and she goes home for the reading of the will, and she is left, to everyone's surprise, the ranch. But there's a stipulation that she has to live on it for a year and kind of learn how to the running of the things before she can sell it or whatever she wants to do to it. And she makes it very obvious that she intends to sell it, because she has this like fancy like cowgirl boot company, like they're like sparkly fashion cowboy boots, and she needs the money for like production and stuff. And Cash needs the revenue that comes from the ranch in order to save his own family's ranch. They are enemies to lovers for sure. Like, he is just like, you are like, this is a waste of time for all of us, because we know this is going to happen. You have no interest in being here. Like, why are you even here? And obviously, like, eventually she starts to learn about the ranching and the day-to-day life, and they fall in love. It's pretty much what it is. I still give it 3.5 stars, because I appreciated the attention to detail with ranch life. We got to see cowboys cowboying, which I really, really appreciate, because there was a couple books I read where they were cowboys, but you don't really get to see the cowboying. They just kind of mention that they live on a ranch and gloss over some things. But like this, you get to see everything. I enjoyed it for that aspect, just the vibes alone. And then this actually sets up for book 2, which is all the brothers have a book. So the end of this sets up for book 2, which I'm definitely going to read, because it was still a good time. I enjoyed it. Then I read, so far, possibly my favorite book of the year, and that is Alone with You by Ali Martinez. Again, this is in the same video I read Cash, so like you can see me gush and like cry about that, but this book, y'all, I don't think I've read a book this good since I read... Okay, so the stars are on our side. I gave 4 stars, but the emotional impact of that book is almost similar to this one. And apparently Ali Martinez has not written a book in like 2-3 years, which I didn't know, because I love her writing, and I love her books. I need to go back and read more of her backlist. But this book broke me. I loved it. Gave it 5 stars if I didn't say that already. It is so emotionally taxing. It's so beautifully written. It's a second chance. We have our hero and our heroine have a past together. He ends up going off to the military, and like something happens there, and he becomes very like, he has a lot of PTSD and issues from being overseas, and he loses like his whole unit he thinks is his fault, so he has survivor's guilt. And because of that is when him and the heroine, they split up. and then something else happens not 6 months later after he's home that is just breaks him completely. He is now a recluse. He doesn't leave the house hardly at all. He has a routine that he has to like live by, or he just like breaks down and he can't function properly. And one part of that routine is going to this diner down the street every Wednesday night. And then one day he goes and the diner's closed. And it turns out that the heroine bought the diner and is like remodeling it. That's why it's closed. And he's just like freaking out. He's like, please just let me sit in there. I just need to sit in there for an hour. I won't bother you. I won't. And she's like, what the fuck is wrong with you? But she gives into him because she like has feelings for him and like understands his trauma because she was there when it happened, or not there, but like she was part of that. And it's just so good. We get the flashbacks to what happened that broke him and broke them, and it is a second chance. It's so good. It's the flashbacks are what get me because they're from Truett's POV and you're in his head, and there is triggers in the beginning of this. Please read them. It mentions suicide, thoughts of suicide ideation, that kind of stuff, so just be aware of that going in. PTSD obviously, but yeah, read triggers. But this book was just so good. It made me cry. I didn't sob. The Stars Are on Our Side made me sob, ugly sob, but that's because I knew what was coming and I was anticipating it. This I didn't know it was coming, and it still hit that emotional punch. 5 stars. Go read it. It's so good. Okay, next I read the last 2 I have are a couple of novellas, Halloweeny like horror novellas. I've been on Dark and Disturbed like Facebook page and just kind of like finding, I'm in the it's September, so I'm in like a spooky season mood right now. So the first novella I read was No Place to Hide by Harper Ashley and Ren Hawthorne, and I gave this 4 stars. This one was probably one of the exceptions where I finished reading this going, well, that was a good time. Okay, I had fun. There is like, I think because there is a time frame, like a limit, this takes place over the course of one evening. So when daybreak comes, that's the end of the night. That's the end of the novella. Like, it made sense in my brain. It doesn't just like stop. But this is it takes place at a pop-up carnival, and our hero is a carny who is working at like the fun house, and our heroine goes for one night, and she is kind of one of those, like, I want to say almost like goody two-shoes sort of heroines, and wants to experience something a little bit dark and depraved and like out of her element, and he delivers. And it is a smutty, wild time. There are like, he like stalks her through the carnival and chases her, and like, yeah, it's a good time. There are like 30 triggers listed on this, but which is why I read it, because I'm like, okay, I'm trying to find like my trigger limit. Like, give me the thing that like makes me go, nope, I can't. This is where I stop. This is where my limit is. Haven't found it yet. This one especially, there were a lot of triggers listed, but like I didn't really like feel any of them, if you know what I mean. Like I could pinpoint them, but I'm like, they don't really like do anything for me, you know. But it was a good time. Smutty, fun, good time. And then the last novella I read for the month of August is Scream for Us by Molly Doyle. This is the prequel, I guess, to Order of the Unseen series. I'm pretty sure. So the reason I read this one is I'm going to see Molly Doyle in Authors in the Bluegrass, and I did pre-order the Dark and Disturbed bundle they have, and this series is in the bundle, is an omnibus in the bundle. So I read the first one. It is now listen, I'm not a big Why Choose fan, which is why I didn't even rate this. I'm looking at this, I didn't even rate it. I think it's probably like a 3-star read for me. Again, I'm not a big Why Choose person. But this one was fun because it was, again, Halloween themed, and there's 3 heroes. I don't know if they're friends, brothers, I have no idea, but they are all dressed as like horror villains. So like one of them is Michael Myers, one of them is Jason, and like the main one is the Ghostface from Scream. And like pretty much the entire book, they're just dressed like that. And I don't remember what she's dressed as. I don't even think they tell you what she's dressed as, because at one point she says like she doesn't even know what she's supposed to be. She's just dressed up for Halloween because she went to this Halloween party and gets like assaulted a couple times, and they step in and stop it, and then she has sex with she has sex with Ghostface first. He's like the main guy, and then she has it with, and then the other two are like they're watching, and then like she has it with like the other. I don't remember if she has it with all three of them in this, but there's definitely at least two of them. I don't know, but I'm intrigued because I just want to know more about each of them. Like you get POVs from, it's mostly from her POV. You do get a little bit of a visual from Ghostface, because there's a thing that happens where she gets, so she tried to commit suicide when she was like a teenager because she was bullied so badly, and these guys find out about it and are like, who did it? And they go in and just like annihilate them. Like they kill them in like brutal, horrible ways, like in a horror movie style killing for her. So there's that. And I am just, and this was only not even 100 pages long. Like it was super, super short. So I know there's books after this where it's like full length novels. So I'm intrigued. I want to read more. Like I said, Why Choose isn't my favorite thing, so I'm going to be a little bit more like picky about it, but I'm into it. I'm into this one, at least, just especially for like Halloween spooky season, because it was just a fun time. That's it. Those are the 14 books that I read in August. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know down below what you thought of any of these books I mentioned. If you disagree with me, agree with me. If you have any other recommendation for me for like spooky season, dark, depraved, like fuck me up kind of books, I'm all ears. Let me know in the comments. And that's it for this video. See you guys in my next one. Bye.